First of all, I want to thank you for the organizers of the event, for inviting us here, for inviting us to the first logistics fair organized by SCTO. We as Caucedo, we feel that the Caribbean has a lot of potential that is yet to be exploited. And while I was thinking about what to talk about, because I did not want to strictly talk about the logistics that we're developing, I wanted to go a little bit more further. And I was looking for subjects. I went to the email that Ms. Casanova sent to me, and I saw how she was saying, let's move the Caribbean. And I love the phrase because it showed how the Caribbean has an untapped potential, right? That there's a lot more that we could do than what we're currently doing. And us in Caucedo, we feel exactly the same. Why? Because we're trying to move the Caribbean. We're trying to put the Caribbean in the map. And how are we doing that? Well, we are trying to create and doing all our efforts in creating the ideal logistics platform. This is a projection picture of our terminal. And I'm going to go in a little bit more information in that regard. But before talking about that, I wanted to talk about how creating a hub impacts the region. There's a lot of talk of Caribbean hub, how to create a hub, but how does creating a hub affect the region? And there's a lot of factors involving in that. First of all, it shifts trade patterns and infrastructure. There's a lot of addition of new destinations from the shipping lines serving those markets. There's the higher frequency of the services serving those markets. There's also a facilitation of those new entrants to the market. There's also carriers trying to consolidate all their operations in a single port. And there's also an improved reliability of the services. You've seen the cases, and we've done a lot of studies in terms of Singapore. We studied Dubai, we studied Panama, and in all of those cases, the story repeats itself. You see how Singapore, which is a really small country, they move 30 million TEUs a year, 33 million TEUs a year, and it's a really small country. And how did they do that? Well, by creating everything that they needed for a hub, it impacted highly, and that's a service-based economy right now today. So when we're talking about hubs, what does it require? What requires being a hub, right? So there are a couple of requirements. Some of them are natural characteristics. Some of them are natural characteristics, and some of them are catalysts. For the natural characteristics, you have obviously the geographical location. That's a given, right? You also have to have an industrial base. You have to have something in the country in which you can leverage on, and you also need good infrastructure. That is critical for you to develop a hub. There's also catalysts which are not natural characteristics, and those are you have to have a good interaction with adjacent networks of cargo. You also have to have, and it's very important, a government support, that you cannot move and do anything without a correct support from the government. And there's also competitive advantage in labor costs. You have to have that in order to attract those value-added services to that and creating a hub. Now, in the case of the Dominican Republic, what do we have? Why are we saying that we have everything that we need to become a hub and impact the Caribbean region? Well, we talked about geographical location, and you know this. We are in the epicenter of the Americas. We all share that. We are equidistant to the major markets: East Coast US, Central America, East Coast South America. We are also the #1 economy in the region. We have a 6% year-over-year GDP growth. for this year, and we also have a projected 5.7 GDP growth for next year. We also have 11 million people living in the island, plus the about 12 million living in Haiti. So that gives you an island with about 22 to 23 million people living there. We also have about 7 million tourists per year going into the Dominican, and that's increasing. That's been increasing about 5% year over year for the past 5 to 6 years. And we're also the number one FDI, foreign domestic investment, attracting company in the region. So that makes it very interesting. Now, we also talked about, obviously geographical location, industrial base, but there's also the need to have good infrastructure. And why do we say that we have good infrastructure? Well, we just made an investment, about $30 million investment in the port to dredge the port basin from 13.5 meters all the way to 15.2. No, go back, please. Okay, you see the main berth. We had the dredging from 13.5 all the way now to 15.2. And we also dredged the further part there for further berth expansion to 17 meters. We are also been awarded the port with the best efficiency and productivity by the Caribbean Shipping Association for 2014. Those who know about port productivity, our gross moves per hour are about 30 right now. And we also have 5 post-Panamax cranes, 1 super post-Panamax crane, and 2 mobile hardware cranes. We also serve as hub already as a secondary hub for most of them, for 16 of the major shipping lines, including Maersk, MSC, CMA, and on all of that. And we also have, in the Dominican Republic, a 60% local market share. Our volume is around 800,000 TEUs a year. We also have unparalleled security technology. That's part of the having a good infrastructure. We just invested in a new machine to scan all the containers to avoid having delays going out of the port. That scanner can scan about 170 containers per hour. That's the same technology that when you go through the airports in the U.S. that you have to put your hands up. That's the same technology, the same company that's developing this latest technology. As a port, we also have a very secure environment. We have all of these certifications that you see here, CTPAT and all those. In addition to that, we have one of the best maritime connectivities in the region, connecting Far East, Europe, and all these points that you see there. Next, please. But now talking about the logistics center, we've recently acquired 370,000 square meters for built-to-suit facilities adjacent to the port. So it's going to be the first logistics center inside a port in the region. That's the picture of the first warehouse that we've already built. It's been 100% leased and compromised. We are also building the second one, and you'll see in the pictures further on, we've signed IKEA that's going to do the regional distribution there in the Dominican Republic. And please go to the next. That's the inside of the first warehouse. It's a 10-meter height building, Class A warehouses. Next, please. And that's a picture of the second building that we're building for IKEA, and 2 further that are coming by the end of this year. It makes it very interesting because all of those companies, when we talk to them, when we engage them, they see a lot of potential in the Caribbean, specifically IKEA. They've set up some new model in which they set up smaller shops. You usually see IKEA and you see this huge store. Now they're developing a model in which they have smaller distribution shops, and they see the potential for the Caribbean. And the first question was, what's the connectivity with the Caribbean? How can we reach the Caribbean in a more efficient? And this all goes, in line with what we've been talking today. How can we improve that? So building a hub, developing that hub can help with all of those questions that you were raising before. And us in Caucedo, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to increase the need for shipping lines to go to the Caucedo and start creating new services for the Caribbean, which in fact will ultimately help you. because of the hub impact that we were talking before. Next, please. We're also located right next to the airport, so it's adjacent to the airport. So we have a port, you have the logistics center, and you have the airport. That's a picture right there. So it creates the ideal multi-modal platform. So this is a traditional model of a hub and spoke, where you have the factory, you send it to a centralized hub, and from that hub, you then distribute, right? So once you reach to the port, you have to transport that cargo to the warehouse, and then from that warehouse, you have to transport it back to the port. So what we're doing right now is what we call the port-centric logistic, which is a very popular term right now. Next, please. So we're cutting on those transportation costs, and we're doing all of those activities that you were doing before outside the port, we're doing it inside the port. So what are the port-centric advantages, logistics advantages to this? Next, please. First of all, you have efficient customs procedures. Why customs never leaves, the cargo never leaves the port. So custom has a lot of control over their cargo. They're allowing for much more swifter transactions, and they do not lose the control of that container. Second one is, back please, reduction in transportation and supply chain costs. Obviously, you are cutting on 2 transports that cargo needs. You're saving. In the Dominican Republic, for example, from Caucedo, the nearest free zone is about, let's say, 10 miles away, or less, let's say like 6 miles away. And the average cost of the container is 120. So you're saying that you're going to save, by doing that logistics activity in the port, you're saving about $240 per container. Translate that to, 1,000, 2,000 TEUs that you move every year. You also have improved availability of the products. That merchandise is already in the port. You don't have to, arrange for an outside transportation company to come to your warehouse to transport it to the port and do all that. You have that already available. So cut-off times between the lines are very much reduced. And there's also lead time reductions, obviously. And all of this is happening under a free zone environment. The free zone law in the Dominican Republic, back please. The free zone law in the Dominican Republic is one of the most robust free zone laws in the region. We have created about 160,000 jobs. You have companies such as Colhan. We are the number 2 exporter of medical devices to the U.S., number 1 cigar exporter to the world, number 2 circuit breaker supplier to the world. And there's a huge advantage to using the free zone law. Some of these incentives I include here. There's 100% exemption on income taxes, export, re-export charges, taxes on import of raw materials, and all that. You have 100% foreign ownership. You also have 0% corporate tax for 15 years, which is renewable. And you have absolutely no restriction on capital repatriation. And do you remember when I was saying about the importance of the costs, the labor costs? The average salary a month for one of those free zone employees is about $170, $180 a month. So that's very competitive. So take all of that into consideration, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to put the Caribbean, we're trying to move the Caribbean by creating a hub that could impact all of us here. Thank you.